Hello, and welcome to episode 378 of Scarves Around the Funnel, the podcast dedicated to Scottish Premiership leaders Heart of Midlothian Football Club. One win in five league games, having only scored once in our last three fixtures. Or just one defeat in 14 Premiership matches and a 2 point lead at the top of the table. Is your glass half empty or half full? Today's episode is titled Bigger Picture because I think that's what we have to look at right now. Because on today's show, we'll be taking a look at that bigger picture. Every league is a marathon, not a sprint. You don't suddenly become the best manager in the world because your team goes through the first set of fixtures unbeaten. And just as importantly, you don't become a shite manager because your team fails to beat Dundee United, Aberdeen, and Motherwell. I'm joined tonight by my co-host, or maybe co-pilot, given it looks like he's going to land a plane sometime soon. He's not my guest. He's my co-pilot. He's my co-host. He's my trusty lieutenant. However, is Scott McIntosh's glass half empty or half full? Good evening, sir.
It is half full, but I think it's fair to say there's still room to call out one or two decisions and one or two trends that have developed over the last sort of handful of games. So I'm looking forward to discussing it tonight. I think this is
Hmm.
always the great thing about recording this pod a couple of days after the event is that we get a little bit of time to take stock and sort of maybe think about how we've reacted to the match in the immediate aftermath. I think that's the benefit that we get that managers and fans who love going on social media have. So yeah, I think this will be a good game to discuss and hopefully the things that we maybe come on to criticise tonight are things that we're not going to see over the next few games or you know, weeks or months leading up to the end of the season.
I agree with that because look, we have a brilliant win over whoever you want to jump on a microphone immediately and do a podcast. But on the other hand, you don't particularly want to do that after a mundane performance. You do want to do that to get your things off your chest when we've had a shitty performance. So yeah, a couple of days gives us an opportunity just to kind of breathe a little bit and to see the bigger picture. Now, for me, the Rangers Falkirk result and Rangers dropping 2 points was more important for Hearts than Celtic winning at Hibs. Because right now, especially with this being the last season where second place in the table is still going to get you entry, albeit into the early qualifying rounds of the Champions League, from next year, i.e., the following year in Europe, it's going to be very, very difficult. So we've had a wonderful start to the season, okay, beyond any of our wildest dreams. But I still think right now, I'd love Hearts to win the league, but Rangers dropping points and ultimately Hibs losing. Of course, I wanted that to be a draw, but it wasn't. And for me, Rangers, who looked not good at all, and for them to drop as many points as possible before the transfer window opens, I don't know what they'll do, and I don't trust them to do anything good. I would trust us a lot more than them. But I just think Rangers can drop as many points as they want right now. And I think that's more important to Hearts because we can do what we can do this weekend and against Kilmarnock. That's my take. But is it a good take, a hot take, or just a shite take?
No, I think it's understandable. I would say that when we when we have that take, I think we're jumping the gun. I still think we're in a strong position. I think this is where we do need to look at, like you said earlier, we do need to look at that bigger picture. I think if you look at Hearts, Celtic, and Rangers, and you look at how those three clubs are set up moving into the January transfer window, we are the team that are looking at that from a position of strength. We know what we're looking to do. We know which players are surplus to requirements because Derek McInnes came through the door in May. Celtic are still waiting to announce their new manager. So he's going to have to, in a very short window, try and decide which players are going to suit his system and which players he needs to try and bring into the team, either bringing out from the cold or trying to sign next month in what's normally quite a challenging transfer window. Rangers manager again has only been through the door a matter of weeks. They've then had the recent upheaval in terms of boardroom changes as well and directors of football. So I think if you look at where Celtic and Rangers are off the pitch, and you look at the fact that we've identified that right wing was an issue. Chesnikov's already on his way. I think we've identified that right back is somewhere we need to strengthen, and all the talk seems to suggest that we're already making moves in that area as well. And there's even possible rumours about another forward coming through the door as well. I think when you look at that, all the signs are there to Hearts being in a stronger position as a squad by the end of January. I think with Celtic and Rangers, it's still very much up in the air in terms of what is their recruitment strategy. Okay, they're going to have new managers there, but is the infrastructure above them still going to be the same as what it was in the summer? Because if it is, then there's still the potential there for there to be carnage and there to be upheaval and upset amongst the fans. So I think if we're in a position by the end of December where we're still in touching distance, whether that's a couple of points ahead or a couple of points off top spot, I still think we're in a really good position. We just
Mm.
need to learn from some of the troubling trends that I've seen over the last few weeks, but I do think they're lessons that can be learned very quickly.
We'll talk about those troubling trends that Scott has identified. We'll talk about Wilfred Nancy as well and his style of play, which for me might be great eventually if he gets the players that he wants to play that style
He's
with.
a
But
pre-season guy. He's
oh, he's a
well, when I say
100%.
worry, I don't worry. I'm obviously hoping this will be the case,
I'd
but
rather he was in charge than Martin O'Neill
yeah,
for the
yeah,
rest
I
of the
would agree.
season.
I think if
He,
Celtic had kept Martin O'Neill into the end of the season, they'd be in better shape moving forward than
Totally, totally. He's a guy that plays some really nice football. He's very progressive. He's a modern, trendy coach that wants it played quickly and forward. But you need the players to do so, and that involves a goalkeeper coming out of his box and playing a bit like a sweeper, like Motherwell did at the weekend. I'm not
yeah.
sure Celtic have those players. And Rangers, I watched their game against Falkirk yesterday with an absolute gang. And at times in the second half, we're fortunate that Falkirk didn't score. So Hearts are in a great position. I think right now it's just as important, not so much what Celtic do, but also what's happening below us. And if we can maintain a decent gap, we were in a situation, Scott, at the start of the season as the games went on and the wins kept piling on and disappointment over the first dropped points of the season against Motherwell, whereby we weren't in a false position because you deserve what you get. And Hearts were top of the table and they were clear by nearly double-digit points. But it was a from a financial parlance, it was a bit of a false economy, right? Were we nearly double digits better than any team in the league? Probably not. It's not exactly coming home to roost right now. That's why I think the Kilmarnock game on Wednesday is very important. So, the troubling things that Scott's seen, the Killy game on Wednesday, Derek McInnes' identikit for a right back and for a striker. We'll have a look at that. We will grade the remaining matches that we haven't yet graded. So basically, since the Celtic game, that's something Scott and I will continue to do. And of course, we will look back at the game at Fir Park at the weekend that finished Motherwell nil, Hearts nil again. You're listening to Scarves Around the Funnel, sponsored by Forrest Hepburn and McDonald Signs, who've been offering creative sign and print solutions since the 1950s. Hearts of Midlothian's line up to face Motherwell at Fir Park. Did it get your seal of approval, or were you concerned when you first saw it about 75 minutes prior to kick-off on Saturday?
Yeah, definitely concerns. I think the chief concern was around playing a midfield too and having Blair Spittle as part of that partnership. Now, I understand the theory. In fact, I think this is something I touched upon when we played Motherwell at home earlier in the season. There was a lot of talk about the impact that Claudio Braga had coming on at half-time and scoring 2 goals. But actually, I signposted that Blair Spittle done really well that day when he came on as well. And the reason for that is that Blair Spittle is one of the few players we have in the team that's willing to play balls into areas. It doesn't always have to go to feet. He's someone who will try to just play a sort of percentage ball behind the back line, and that's how Braga got his first goal in that match. Now, I think what Derek McInnes has done is he's taken stock of that performance possibly and thought, well, Blair Spittle's someone who could maybe do that again in that team. So I understand that concept, but for that upside, there's many downsides to having Blair Spittle in there. Now, I might have even mentioned last week that if you play a midfield three, having Blair Spittle at the top of that three is fine, but you need legs to complement it. And I felt that you were asking a lot of Cammy Devlin on Saturday by sticking Blair Spittle next to him. I also think we have to remember one of the big issues that was raised last season when Jamestown came in, before they even got involved from a recruitment standpoint, was they carried out this sort of review of the squad that Stephen Naismith had assembled and that Neil Critchley had inherited. And the big issue was around athleticism and pace. That was the chief red flag that they had. That was the one thing that we were really lacking in our squad. Now, between Derek McInnes, Graham Jones, and Jamestown, they've went a long way to identifying that and trying to remedy it. But I felt Saturday we were starting to make a step backwards into becoming a sort of passive one pace side. And I think the likes of Blair Spittle and to a lesser extent Stephen Kingsley at left back are problems. I just think we've all discussed that Borchgrevink came through the door before McInnes came through the door. We've discussed that potentially from a physical standpoint, he has probably not got the genetic makeup of a right back that Derek McInnes wants. What I do not understand though is that to compensate for one player that you don't rate, you're now willing to weaken three areas of the park. That being centre of midfield, because if you start Borchgrevink on Saturday at right back, you can put McAtee in his position at centre mid, play Milne at left back where he should be playing, and then you switch Kizarides over to the right and have Braga on the left and start Kabori. That's what you do. You play players to their strengths. The fact that he's willing to stick with McAtee in at right back, which then means Spittle coming in at centre midfield. I don't understand it. I really don't get it. And this Harry Milne experiment, it worked at Ibrox. That's fine. But it's an experiment that's been long past its sell by date. They need to ditch it because you're not getting the best out of Harry Milne. Stephen Kingsley is fine as a left fullback, but one of the reasons that Kizarides has been so influential at times is because he's got a left back that's willing to overlap, and Kingsley just doesn't give you that option as much as Harry Milne does. He will do it on occasion, but he doesn't have the pace and power that Harry Milne does. So you're weakening three areas of the park on Saturday before you've even kicked the ball. And if I'm honest, given the starting 11, I think we'd do well to get a draw out of that game.
I think bigger picture, and I'm going to refer back to bigger picture a lot in this episode. I think bigger picture, a point at Motherwell's fine. It's the defeat at Aberdeen that's more, whether it's concerning. I don't know what the word would be because we were without Halkett, obviously Benny and Shanklin for that one, but it's not a case of what you deserve in a game, it's what you end up with. I would have liked a better performance at Motherwell, but I want to refer to what you've just said because it fits in nicely with what Derek McInnes said after the match. And these are quotes that he gave to Barry Anderson at the Edinburgh Evening News. And I'm going to read them all to you because a lot of them refer to what you've just been speaking about. So this is Dell's right to reply, and then Scott McIntosh can have his right to reply to Derek McInnes' right to reply to you. So this is what he said. It was the same team other than Benny Beningame that won at Ibrox. We got a lot right. Everybody has this in their head now. This is when he's talking about McEntee playing at right back. That all of a sudden Oisín isn't good enough. It's a nonsense and they need to support our players a bit more. Oisín has done fine. It's all about balance. Wide right has been a problem for us for a while now. And we've spoken about that. We are a team with one defeat in 14 league games, and we've had another clean sheet at the weekend. Our attacking threat doesn't become less potent because of who our right back is. It is stupid for people to suggest that. There are more quotes for Derek McInnes, which I'll
You
get
want
to
me to start
shortly.
before you get to more quotes?
I do, exactly.
Right.
I'm going to
So,
say, what would you say to what he's just said about what you've said?
so he's just mentioned how that doesn't affect our attacking play. Did he watch that occasion in the first half where McAtee, rather than take and whip a ball in first time when he needed to, took two extra cut touches and then didn't get the cross in? So there's one example, straight off the top of my head, of how that doesn't work. That's one example. He talks about supporting McAtee. I've not heard any fans get on top of him. I think we all recognise that he's been put in a challenging position and he has done well to a point. There's been some games where I think he's been really good. I think he's been really underrated this season. But when you've got another option there that allows McAtee to play in his proper position, that to me would be supporting that player, developing him properly and getting him in his preferred position. Because right back isn't it. I'm sorry, Harry Milne's not a right winger. Again, you're asking him to take a touch and come in on his left foot all the time. When again, Harry Milne's best when he's overlapping Kazidis and giving us that option. So I'm afraid, in terms of what he discusses, in terms of we should take stock and be happy where we are, completely understand that. He needs to accept that there's valid criticism for Saturday. There's valid criticism because that was not the right team. And to say, well, it's the same team that played against Rangers apart from Benny Beningame. I'm sorry, but are we now saying that Blair Spittle's an acceptable replacement for Benny Beningame in terms of what Benny offers us? Because I don't see it. So that is a big drop off, and I like Blair Spittle, but he's not a centre mid, not in a two, especially in Scottish football. It's something we saw Stephen Naismith do and fail. It's something we saw Neil Critchley try and do and fail. It doesn't work. And Derek McInnes should know better.
Thank you, Mr. McIntosh. Back to you, Mr. McInnes. Thank you, Mark. We were playing a team who are heavily possession-based, so we tried to get our distances right and make sure we filled the middle of the pitch, as we did at Ibrox. The difference at Ibrox was I thought we had real potency about us and connected the game well. We secured the ball well. In the first half on Saturday, we didn't do enough to show our attacking threat. I thought we could have switched the play around our shape a bit more, connected with our strikers and broke with more purpose. Our attacking threat has had a lot of praise, rightly so, but it wasn't quite there on Saturday. We also need to try to get a bit more control in games when we are in possession. We need more authority in games to stop being a bit rushed. I think we have been a wee bit rushed in the last two games. At Aberdeen, we didn't get our clean sheet, but we were the better team and created chances. At Motherwell, we got the clean sheet and worked hard for it, but I think we're better than what we showed. We take the point and we move on. It's a point at an informed Motherwell, who a lot of people were tipping to win this game. It was roughly the same in terms of possession and shots, but we don't work their goalkeeper enough. We got into some good areas. We need to get back to showing a wee bit more belief and put crosses into the box, because that part of our game hasn't been quite there. As I say, it was the same team that played at Ibrox bar one. I just think we expected a bit more from us in an attacking sense. Thank you, Mr. McInnes. Mr. McIntosh, what do you say?
I think the point about the attackers is very valid. I think our attacking options have been pretty off the boil the last three games. I think chiefly their decision making. There's just times now where Kazidis and Braga are just taking far too many touches, one touch too many, when earlier on in the season they weren't doing that. So I think they need to look at their application. I think it's only fair to highlight as well that both those players have been rightly booked in the last two games for simulation, and it's just something I don't want to see. We'd be the first ones to moan about when another team does it. There's just no need for it. So I'm hoping that's something that's discussed with them as well. But again, let's talk about forwards. I thought Kabori had a decent game against Aberdeen. I thought Kabori was making the right runs. The issue was that Claudio Braga, they just weren't in sync. And I felt that bringing Lauren Shanklin back in the team would have actually possibly helped that scenario. But yet Kabori drops out the team. So again, I think there's a possible working solution there to what Derek McInnes decided to go ahead with. And again, it could have been, it's not even a case of having to drop Braga or Kazidis. Play Kazidis on the right, Braga on the left, and play Kabori up top and get Milne back in his proper position, which is left back. So he's discussing this like there's no alternative options. There's plenty of alternative options. We've got a big squad just now. He just decided not to take those options on, and he's suffering from it. Saturday was unacceptable from a team selection standpoint. He doesn't have to make it that convoluted. And from what I've seen of Borshevink, I understand the concerns that McInnes may have in terms of I don't think he's somebody McInnes will view as a long-term right back, but the downside to him is not enough to warrant weakening three other positions in your team. It just doesn't.
We're in a situation, in a position right now, whereby we're top of the table by 2 points. And if this is our bad spell, and I heard you and Joel talking about this on Heart Standard last week, that's what makes this game against Kilmarnock massive for me. I don't know about you on Wednesday, because a win and we're back on track. Anything less than a win, and look, they're not going through a good time right now, but they've got a good record at Tynecastle over the past few years. So I think Wednesday night's huge because Sunday will take care of itself against Celtic. And I'm sure we'll see all the memes if Hearts lose about bubbles bursting and championship challenge over and everything like that. But if Hearts win, then what? But I think to go into that game, that's why I think this Kilmarnock game is one of the biggest of the season for us. Is that fair?
Yeah, yeah, I think purely from a momentum standpoint, we need to get a
Hmm.
bit of momentum back prior to Sunday. I think I might be hyperbolic in saying this, but I think it'd be a bit of a disaster if we don't get 3 points on Wednesday. I think that's vital because it's not all about needing to beat Celtic. What you need to do to set a title challenge first and foremost is be very consistent against all the other teams. And up until the last couple of weeks, we have been consistent, including even beating Rangers and Celtic. I think we need to make sure we get back to that type of form first and foremost, because that will keep us in the chasing pack. And then it does boil down to how you get on with your one-to-one matches against Celtic and maybe to a lesser extent Rangers. I think they need to win on Wednesday. There's no excuses for it. We've got options there. I think it's vital that we get a win there and we take that momentum into Sunday and see where that takes us.
Once the team is selected, it is what it is, and the game starts, the ball rolls. What was good for Hearts on Saturday, and what wasn't?
So, first half, there wasn't a lot good about us. Second half, I thought we pressed the game and McInnes talked about those distances. I thought we got those distances a lot better for about a half an hour spell in the second half. And then we reverted back to our old ways in the last 15. And we're probably, riding our luck to an extent. I think that chance for Elijah Just, where Schwolow makes a really good save, he should really be putting that away. He really shouldn't be giving the keeper a chance, but he still does well, makes himself big. But yeah, I thought first half we were very poor on Saturday. Second half we were a lot better. We got the distances a lot better. And, we're a bit unfortunate with Shankland. It was a really good header and it was a really good clearance for Henry. But we would have been lucky to have walked away with 3 points. 1 point is probably about the maximum that we should have taken away from that. I thought Motherwell weren't that great either. And I think this
They've
is
been
something
better, haven't
Motherwell.
they, this season?
Yeah, I think this is something Motherwell need to work on. I think if you look at the amount of touches that Motherwell get in the opposition box, it's not where it should be for a team that have that much possession. So I still think they've got things to improve on in the final third, in terms of moving the ball quicker in that area. I think what was really impressive about Motherwell against Hibs was that it was in transition. They won the ball really quickly and they were able to break away at pace and sort of, catch Hibs when their wing backs were further up the park. But they've still got a bit to learn. So I don't think it was a particularly good match on Saturday, and I don't think either team really played that well. So a draw was probably just about right, even although Motherwell probably had one or two more chances than we did.
There were two or three spells when I was watching, and I kind of thought, this is disorganized under 15 football between kids that haven't played together before. It was like a hot potato. There were some good spells. I thought Motherwell had some really nice moves. I thought Hearts in the second half moved it around nicely. I think it would have been a different story if I think it might have been, was it Callum Hendry that cleared off the line
Yeah,
from Lawrence Shankland? I mean, it's a brilliant clearance
yeah.
off the line. It would have been a different story if Hearts go 1-0 up, because how did they react? So a points, it's not the end of the world. And I think we have to be in a position whereby we can be critical, just like we can praise when things are going well. And there was a lot to praise at the start of the season with all those results having gone every single team having played them and not lost to them. So there has to be an element of identifying what went wrong in games that maybe didn't go our way. But the bottom line is, this is still a fantastic position to be in. And I think you can see both sides of the story. We're not saying it's the end of the world when we don't win a game. We're not saying it's the best thing in the world when we do. We now go into a game against Kilmarnock that's absolutely massive. And if we can get 3 points, then we're guaranteed to go into the Celtic game top of the table this weekend. You're listening to Scarves Around the Funnel, sponsored by Forrest Hepburn and McDonald Signs, who've been offering creative sign and print solutions since the 1950s. Mark Donaldson and Scott McIntosh. And the pair of us, a few weeks ago, started doing this kind of give the performance in the game a grade project. So we got as far as the Celtic game. So we've got 5 games to give a grade, simply A through D, depending on how we played, not the result, but how we played. So the first one, chronologically to start with after Celtic, was St Mirren 2, Hearts 2. What is your letter grade for this performance, Scott?
Slithering between a B minus and a C. It was, I thought it was a decent performance, and again, it's a game we probably could have nicked at the end, even if we maybe wouldn't have fully deserved it. I'll go with a C, because defensively we had lapses for the 2 goals that we lose. You know, we're just far too deep for that first goal, and then there's a poor clearance from, not a clearance, but I think Finlay gets knocked off the ball for somebody, his own player, I think, in the lead up to the second goal. And then, you know, depending on who you ask, we get a touchy, you know, good fortune with the goal that St Mirren get disallowed when they're 2-1 up as well. So I'd probably go a C for that. We do well to fight back twice, and again, you know, we kept pushing for a late winner and nearly found it. So it was a good reaction after the Celtic game in terms of, you know, the question after beating Celtic was going to be, well, can they go and win in St Mirren? And although we didn't get a win, we did fight back after being down twice. So yeah, I'll give that one a C.
C as well for me. Should have been 3-1 down. I'm not sure we come back from 3-1.
Yeah.
A goal down throughout this season, I've never felt overly concerned at going a goal down when we have, which hasn't been too often. But if we'd gone 2 goals down, I think that would have been curtains for us. So we got a bit of luck. You need that bit of fortune, but I thought the performance on the whole, I thought was much better when we kind of played freestyle a little bit, trying to get back into the game. But over the piece, I'm with you. It's probably not enough to be a B minus, so a C for me for that one. Hearts 4, Dundee nil.
B minus for that one. It was
Okay.
first half an hour, we struggled to break them down. We do really well to get the goal, and it was a good goal. Good build-up play. Harry Milne plays a big part, you know, running in deep from his proper position. Finding Shankland with a really good, intelligent ball, cutting it back to him, and it's a really good finish for Shankland. We then get a good goal for a set play. You know, we score another good goal, although it's just a tap-in for Kabori. There's a good build-up to it. And then we get the fourth goal again, another goal for it. But it was pretty routine. I never really had the feeling that we were out of sort of second gear. So it's hard to really give it a bigger rating than that. I think the game did say a lot about Dundee as much as it did about us.
Hmm.
I think we talked about this after the game in terms of the frustrated figure that Simon Murray sort of cut when he was coming off, and it was a similar performance to what I saw for Livingston a couple of years ago when they played one midweek at Tynecastle, where they just showed no desire to attack at all, even when they went behind. So I think that has to have a bit of effect on how you rate the game. So I'd probably go B minus for that one.
Okay, I'll go slightly better. I'll go a B for this one. I think when we did the Falkirk game, you gave them a B plus. I gave them a B simply because the game's won. You've kind of you know the game's won, so you're trying to kind of not so much go through the motions. You're not trying to do that, but you're in a position whereby, right, whatever. Against Dundee, we kept going. We kept going. We kept pushing. It wasn't great first half hour, but once we got the first goal, and it was a super goal, to get the second so soon afterwards, I think it merits a little bit more than a B minus. I'll give that a B for that win against Dundee. And this is the performance, remember, not the result. Hearts 1, Dundee United 1. What you got?
Uh, think gonna have to say a C minus for that one. I, I feel for the players because I think there was no shortage of effort against Dundee United. I just feel that they were trying to rush things, and in particular in the second half. I think Dundee United getting that goal right on half time had a huge impact on the game. I think if we'd got in there 1-0, maybe Derek McInnes try and calm them down. We might have been able to have seen the game out, but I just felt that too many individuals just rushed again decision making. That was probably the first game there where you started to see some of our more influential players just struggle a little bit in terms of making the right decision, in terms of releasing the ball, keeping the ball, involving their teammates. So again, we try the Kabori out wide right thing again in the first half. It isn't working. I think we can see that now. So yeah, I would probably say a C minus for that one. It was disappointing. I think the players gave their all, but ultimately you would probably say that if one team were going to win it by the end, it was probably going to be Dundee United and not us. If the game goes another 5-10 minutes, it just had that feel of we just weren't really going to break them down in that second half.
I would have given the team selection and the fact we went with Kizaridis and Braga and Shankland and Kabori high marks pre-game, but it didn't work. And Derek McInnes said as much afterwards that for whatever reason they couldn't get them all to do what he wanted them to do. And I'm going to go C minus as well for that one. I just feel we didn't click as much as we wanted to. Obviously, subs were made at halftime. Kingsley coming on, Steinwender coming on, McEntee and Kabori going off. So it kind of was a tale of two halves. But even in the second half, having just been pegged back before halftime, we didn't really create enough. As you said, they were just as likely to score as we were. So that was a disappointing C minus for me. Aberdeen won, Hearts nil.
Back up to a C. I actually don't think that performance is as bad as some people made it out to be at the time. I think we create enough chances to win the game, to be fair. Uh, I think it's a poor goal to lose, which again can be contributed to one individual in particular, I think, in Frankie Kent. But I thought the team actually played okay in that game. The formation probably didn't suit us, but I understand what Derek McInnes was trying to do in terms of matching Aberdeen. Some people could maybe argue the point and say, well, look, we maybe only created so many chances in the second half because Aberdeen were willing to sit in. They've now sort of changed their shape and their philosophy somewhat under Jimmy Tilleen over the last few weeks. So they were maybe quite happy to try and see out the 1-0 and sort of invite that pressure. Uh, but I thought the players stuck to their game, and I thought we actually played okay. Again, poor finishing was our downfall, and again that decision making. It was another game where Braga and Kizadidis were just not quite on it, and that's fine. The players can go through pot and cold spells. But yeah, I would probably go with a C for that game.
I'm going to go slightly better. I'm going to go C plus. And I was looking earlier this season. I also gave Livingston win a C plus, but that was a win, and this was a defeat. I think Derek said afterwards, 7 out of 10, we probably take something or maybe even win that
Mm.
game. We created enough in the match. We were without Shankland, we were without Benny, we were without Halkett in that game. Yeah, we were because it was Steinwender, Kent, and Finlay as the back three, and we did. It's not often in recent years, given that we haven't won there since 2016, that I'm not saying we were in full control of the game because they had a really good chance after a good move when Armstrong fired over. But on the whole, I thought we played all right in that game and certainly deserved to come away with something. It's just that's harder to take than the draw at Motherwell. The fact that we lost a game where we shouldn't have lost, but we found a way to somehow lose the game. I think we should have had a penalty with Kabori and the challenge by Mitov. It's actually
KMI would
reading.
argue with you.
Oh, KMI, yeah. I'm not sure you'll see KMI next season if Willie Collum has anything to
You
do with
better
that.
be
Or they
the
might.
KLF in charge yet, honestly. It's
Yeah. Uh-huh,
mental.
uh-huh.
Uh,
And I did notice the Edinburgh, not the Edinburgh, sorry, the Aberdeen Evening Express have a referee that has a column every week, and he's clearly a local boy who is an Aberdeen fan. He's like, "No, perfect decision. There was no malice involved whatsoever from Mitov." Don't know why I'm putting on a full kind of
Sorry, did a referee
attempt.
use the term malice? Honestly,
He's he's just like, "No, it was an accident." And then you get referees that think it should have been a C plus for me. I'm intrigued to see. So you've gone you've gone C for St Mirren, you've gone B minus for Dundee, you've gone C minus for Dundee United, you've gone C for Aberdeen. What are you going for Motherwell?
C minus, because I think we go in at half-time 0-0 because Motherwell weren't quite at the races rather than anything we do. I thought we were really poor first half on Saturday. We do better for half an hour, but then we go back into those old habits, unfortunately, in the last 15. And again, that could have been enough to see us leave, having lost the match. Uh, Pretty toothless up front again. Too many players making the wrong decision, taking too many extra touches. Uh, and then we've already, talked at the start of the episode about the team selection, which didn't help. I'm not putting this all on the players. I think some of the players do need to bear the responsibility, but I would say Saturday's the most frustrated I've been this season watching Hearts because I felt it was needless. I felt that we were creating a lot of problems through the team selection alone. Uh, and I felt that Motherwell's they just weren't kind of moving the ball quick enough. They kept the ball well, but again, they just weren't getting enough touches in and around the Hearts penalty box to really cause any bother. So yeah, for me, we come away with a draw, but a lot of that's down to Motherwell than it is to us, I would say.
Yeah, I'd replicate most of what you've just said. C minus for me as well. You're listening to Scarves Around the Funnel, sponsored by Forrest Hepburn and McDonald Signs, who've been offering creative print and sign solutions since the 1950s. Okay, troubling tidbits you spoke about earlier. What are they? What are you worried about? Come and speak to Uncle Mark.
Just, yeah, you can phrase it any way you like about talking about, well, there's only one change between that team and the team that won at Ibrox. Rangers were, a basket case of a club at that stage. And yes, we done a lot of things well that day, but it's a big drop off replacing Benny with Blair Spittle in a midfield too in the Scottish Premiership. And as I've already discussed, I'm not going to keep saying it, to weaken three areas of the park because you've maybe got reservations about one of your right backs is just ludicrous. And it does need called out. The results speak for themselves. It's all right saying that we've done well to a degree with what we've been selecting, but the last 3 or 4 matches would then say that, we have come a little bit more unstuck. So we do need to find a solution to that rather than sort of doubling down on the decision. And I kind of feel like Derek McInnes has done that a little bit with his interview with Barry Anderson. He's doubled down a little bit on it. I'd like to think that we will see one or two changes come the Kilmarnock game. Uh, and yeah, I just, you know, with the squad we've got, and I get Beningami's injured, Ajou's injured, Newenoff's injured. uh, I, I just think there's no excuse for having to play Blair Spittle in a midfield too. I think we've got other options there. Uh, yeah, I know it sounds all on Blair Spittle. It's not him that's picking himself. It's just he's got a role in the squad. He's got a role to play in the team at times. But yeah, I still find myself scratching my head around that one. Unfortunately, and that's a that was a bit of a red flag for me. And look, I hope it's just one of these things. We got away with a 0-0, and lessons are learned, and we react to that, and we come out. And again, it's not all on Derek McInnes. Some players need to up their game again as well. Too many players were off it. Stuart Findlay was abysmal on Saturday. I mean, I don't know
Didn't look
whether.
100% fit.
Well, I was going to say that, and if that's the case, then that's another thing that falls back on the manager because you've got
Just leave him in the
McCart
car.
sitting there on the bench who's a more than able replacement at this level. I know he doesn't have the same turn of pace that Stuart Finlay has, but if you play Harry Milne in at left back next to him, then you've got somebody that can cover for that. So, yeah, I felt for Stuart Finlay at times, but it was a rather abysmal performance. And at one stage, Lawrence Shankland was just screaming at him in the first half because he was just getting himself all tied up in knots. So if that is down to fitness, then it's harsh on him. But again, that falls back on the manager's decision making. We need to make better use of that squad. I think we're now entering a period where we've allowed players to bed in. We've obviously wanted to drip feed some of them into the squad, and I think that was the right decision to make for that first, 10, 15 games. But I think we now need to start seeing a little bit more from some of the squad players, and Derek McInnes needs to show a little bit more faith in one or two of them as well. I think Kabori's one in a central position. I think we just need to find a way of making that work. And yeah, Kurjota, when he's ready, I don't know if I think there may have been a small injury or illness on Saturday as to why he wasn't in the squad. But again, I think he's someone. I think home games against the likes of Kilmarnock is when you should be making that tough decision and saying, I think we can play with two wide men and not worry about maybe the physical downside of somebody like Kurjota and maybe involve him in there and just ask him to get involved from an attacking standpoint. But we'll just need to wait and see. But it's just a slight concern. Overall, we should still be really happy with where we are, but we have to make sure that we don't keep harking back to, well, would we have taken this at the start of the season? Because I think it's really easy to get caught up in that. And of
Yeah, we're
course we
past
would
that.
have, of course we
Sure.
would have taken that, but that shouldn't deflect from things that you observe and think could have been done better. And again, it's all
100%.
opinion. I'm not saying
Yep.
what I'm saying is fact, but my observation of Saturday is that the first 11 could have been a hell of a lot better than it was. Uh, so yeah, I think we do need to not keep going back to that sort of that default position of, well, this is where we were expecting to be, but now we're here. Let's not just enjoy it. Let's try and prolong it as best as we can. And this is, we want to be a club that's moving forward. We want to be a club that's progressing. And although I agree that we're ahead of schedule compared to where we thought we were going to be at the start of the season, we should take advantage of that rather than use that as a crux to fall back on when we inevitably start dropping points.
If I wasn't going to call today's episode Bigger Picture, I would call it Adjusting Expectations because you have to do in any walk of life.
Yeah.
This time last year, Hearts had played 14 games and had 9 points. We were 3 points behind Hibernian and we were bottom of the table. This year, we've played 14 points. We've got 31 points with a goal difference of plus 18 compared with minus 9. Now, last year, were we planning for life in the championship the following year? No, of course we weren't. We're like, right, we need to be better than this. This is unacceptable where we are. So you adjust expectations. It's like if you're top of the table right now, your minimum aim has to be European football and has to be third, but probably second, given where you are right now. So it's adjusting the expectations that you have right now. And I think we'd be in trouble if we fell into that default. Oh, would we have taken this? And I think you're spot on with that. Would we have taken this at the start of the season? Yeah, but we're not at the start of the season now. We're now at the start of December, right? We've got Kilmarnock at home, we've got Celtic away. This is a tough period coming up for Hearts. It starts with Kilmarnock at home. And adjusting expectations, for me, I think right now, anything less than a top two finish would be very disappointing for Hearts this season. Is that fair?
Yep. Yeah, I
Okay.
think that's really fair. And you talk about where we were this time last season. At that spell, so let's say I think we played at home to Kilmarnock a couple of weeks into Neil Critchley's spell after getting a couple of wins in Europe and against St Mirren at home. Now at that time, we were still down towards the bottom of the table. Hearts fans going into the game against Kilmarnock would expect to win. Regardless of the fact that we are probably below them in the table at that stage, we are expecting 3 points. So why should that be any different when we're top? Why should we
Shouldn't
then
be.
go back to some weird stance of, oh, but we're doing well. But yeah, but the way of maintaining that is to have standards, and
Yeah.
those standards need to rise to meet where we're currently in as a league position. If we get to the end of the season and we maybe only finish second or third or whatever, we can then maybe look back at the season as a whole and say, well, you know what, it was still reasonably good because we've built up a consistent running form. We've signed player X, Y, and Z who have improved the team. We're going to bring in other players. But at this stage, we're top of the table and we should not be, having discussions around, well, it's good because we're ahead of schedule. I think it's fair to point out that things could have been done better over the last couple of games because that's the only way the club is going to move forwards and upwards. It's not going to move forwards and upwards if we develop or recreate an acceptance culture, which unfortunately has permeated at this club for a while now. And this is why clubs like Hearts, Hibs and Aberdeen have barely won trophies over the last, 3, 4, 5 decades, because there's just been this acceptance of, well, as long as you're better than that other two, that's fine. We're in a
Mhm.
position this season where we can be better than that. And I think we should be striving for that. And fair enough, if the players fall short at the end of it, we can look at why that's happened and move on. But we shouldn't be thinking, oh, well, it'll be fine if we, at the end of the season, we finish here or there or that. Let's just go for it. Again, we talked about this a few weeks ago. We should still be looking to try and enjoy being top of the league at the start of December. We should be basking in that as much as the last few results have been a bit more challenging. We should be going into the Kilmarnock game still quite buoyant as a fan base because of all the good that we have seen this season, even if that has fell off a little bit in the last couple of weeks. We should still be quite confident about where we're going as a club and as a team. And yeah, be confident about January. I've got 100% confidence that by the end of January we will have a better squad and probably better first 11 than what we had at the start of it.
I'm glad you brought that up because I think we've identified who we want in January. We're already getting Chesnikov, and I think they know who else that they want. And I would be surprised come January if our deals that we do are not concluded in the early part of the window. I don't think you'll see many unless an opportunity comes up towards the end of the transfer window that is just something that's far too good to turn down. Then that might be something we do late on. I think we'll do most of our business earlier rather than later. And going back to the results, our last five, and we've just given them grades. No one's got better than a B. Most of them were C's. You and I just going through St Mirren, Dundee, Dundee United, Aberdeen, and Motherwell. There's a thing called recency bias. If we start the season with those five games, with just one win out of five, and then we beat Aberdeen, Dundee United, come back from 3-0 down against Motherwell, score late and win at Livy, win at Ibrox, thump Falkirk, win against Hibs very late on, have a great result at Kilmarnock and beat Celtic 3-1. The mood in the camp is exactly what it was after we beat Celtic 3-1 right now. So I get why Derek McInnes has been a little bit spiky at some of the comments, but I also think a lot of those comments are fair game because I with you. I agree with the team selection maybe not being right. That doesn't mean that it's all tumbling down at Tynecastle. It's none of the sort. We want to have a united front. I get that. But we can't just admit and accept that everything's rosy in the garden, possibly when it's not. We are in a position of strength right now. And if we go to Motherwell and don't win on the back of having lost to Aberdeen, surely we're entitled to question whether or not a right back is playing in that position, who's on the bench, Borchgrevink, and he maybe should have started, or whether McEntee, who's a central midfielder, is playing at right back, or a left back who's playing at right midfield, and that means the backup left back comes in. Surely that's all fair game. It's not trying to derail a team selection or a club or a manager or a playing staff. It's fans on a podcast just saying what we think. Of course, we're fully behind it. Of course, we're enjoying being at the top of the table. And I'm looking forward to Wednesday, just like I look forward to every single Hearts game. The fact we sold out Fir Park, away end at Fir Park, is brilliant. So the fans are with them, but that shouldn't preclude us from being able to have a position of maybe criticism with some of our comments when we think something has been done wrong. That's all. We might be wrong. And who knows, Borchgrevink could have started all these games and been absolutely dug meat. Then that might have been something else. to complain about, but we're not in a bad spot right now. You're listening to Scarves Around the Funnel, sponsored by Forrest Hepburn and McDonald Signs, who've been offering creative sign and print solutions since the 1950s. Before we get a prediction for Kilmarnock and a team from Scott McIntosh, I just want to go through the Derek McInnes identikit for a right back and for a striker. So the three names we've come up with based on us and also based on you and your comments on social media. A right back could potentially be the Scotland under 21 international or the former Scotland under 21 international, Harrison Ashby, who is at Newcastle right now. We've had one or two issues with injuries, but he was signed from West Ham for 3.4 million in January 2023. He's been loaned to Swansea, he's been loaned to QPR. Is he someone that would fit into what Derek McInnes is looking for, Scott McIntosh? Because what is Derek McInnes looking for?
I think he suits or fits that physical stature that Derek McInnes likes in his fullbacks. Where he probably fits in terms of why Jamestown have potentially recommended him is that he's in that sort of risk factor of being someone with an upside, a potential upside, still at a very young age, could still progress and move on for a big fee, but comes with that injury record, which is probably why there is a bias against him from other clubs, maybe looking at moving in for him. So this is what Jamestown are all about. It's trying to find those small margins, and his previous record of not always being fit is possibly where they're looking at and thinking it's worth a gamble. So I think from a McInnes standpoint, from what I've seen of him in terms of his physical stature, I think he has everything that McInnes would want in a fullback. And then again, the reason why the club might be looking at it is the potential for moving on further down the line and being one of those potential sort of players to sell on at a bigger fee. But then it
I think
depends if it's
it's,
just going to be a loan deal as well. So I don't know.
yeah,
This is where is it loan we may be a view to bringing in the summer? I don't know because Jamestown never strike me as people who are high on loan signings. It would tend to be something that they do as a outlier more than anything else, but it's maybe something they're just looking at as a short-term solution because they can't get a long-term solution fixed until next summer.
and these are just these aren't names that we've heard that Hearts are interested in. These are players that we've put together for positions of need for Hearts. You were the one that mentioned this guy, so that's something to maybe keep tabs on. Harrison Ashby at Newcastle. Two forwards. One is a rehash of a player who was linked with us in the summer, and another one, I think it's been pretty prevalent on Kickback. We've also had a couple of people getting in touch with us. He played in the final game of the Latvian season for new champions Riga, and he's a Brazilian striker. He's very quick. He's not the tallest. He's 1 meter 79. Reginaldo Ramirez is one. And the guy who was linked with Hearts in the summer, who would cost more than the Brazilian, whose market value is not as high as the Norwegian Daniel Carlsbach. This is a kid, a Norwegian under 21 international. He's 22. He plays his football in Norway for Sarpsborg, and he probably cost at least 1.5 to 2 million. But he's 6'3.5", 6'4", and he seems to have everything that you would want in a modern striker. He's been linked with a few clubs in Europe. What about those two, the Brazilian and the Norwegian, who have been linked with Hearts?
Don't know much about Ramirez, who's playing his trade over for Riga. In terms of Carlsbeck, in terms of the Norwegian option, he's someone. Now, I think if he is the player that I was told about in the summer, when Jamestown were doing their sort of analysis and in terms of trying to factor strikers into percentages as in top 10, 15, 20%. Shankland was in that sort of top 15% margin, but this kid was in the top 5%. So they would be looking at him as being a potential upgrade and strengthening of that position on top of what we already have. So it'd obviously be a big outlay. Whether that comes from Tony Bloom, whether that comes from James Anderson, we don't know. But it wouldn't surprise me to see the club break the transfer record that they've only just set over, if not January, then definitely next summer. I think it's something the club will do again rather soon.
Is there a concern, given how hopefully unfortunate, as opposed to anything else, that Aju has been, and automatically you think all that money and we've hardly seen him, that Hearts might be reticent to spend a fair bit of money in January, or do you think that'll have nothing to do with it? And if they've got their eye on someone that they think would be a bargain at the price and they can get a lot more than that in maybe 18 months' time, it'll have nothing to do with how much they've spent with Aju and they'll pay what they need to pay to get who they want.
Yeah, I think taking risks on players is just something that this sort of player trading model sort of prides itself on. You know, it's finding a reason why bigger clubs with big deeper pockets than us might be biased against signing someone and trying to get that player regardless of that bias. Now, could that bias come back and bite us in the backside? Of course it could, whether that's a previous injury record or something else coming along the way. But I don't think that would put the club off bringing someone else in because of the unfortunate circumstances surrounding a due sort of fight for fitness since he's came through the door. Hopefully that comes to an end by the end of this calendar year, and we get to see more of him going into 2026.
Okay, so there's just three players that have been mentioned in various places. Um, Matty JK, because the message I put out was Hearts are likely to sign a striker in January. Put this on social media, try and predict who it might be. Matty JK, if we were able to successfully guess who it might be, why bother with Jamestown analytics? And something I wanted to mention that you spoke about with me before we started to record. There's a distinct chance that Kabori goes off on international duty in January with Burkina Faso. There's a chance that Kabangu will be sold on, whether that's England or elsewhere. James Wilson, I just want to see him get game time because you don't become a bad player overnight, whether or not he's Derek McInnes' type of striker. I don't think he's getting the opportunities right now. So I'd much rather see him, whether it's a loan at St Johnstone or whatever it is, for him to be able to get his confidence back and come back in the summer if that's where he ends up, having scored loads of goals and maybe back in the Premier League, having clinched the title with St Johnstone. So if you're taking out Kabangu and you're taking out Kabori and you're taking out Wilson, do you need another striker? Or do you say, hey, well, James Wilson should be the answer here?
I think you bring somebody else in. And I think you probably, I mean, I think if Kabori goes away for the whole of January and Kabangu goes away, I think you keep James Wilson and still sign somebody. I think you always want to have four options there, because you never know what could happen in terms of suspension and injury. Unfortunately, Lawrence Shankland, he does tend to pick up a few bookings, so there's every chance that, he will pick up a suspension somewhere along the line. So yeah, I think if Kabori temporarily and Kabangu permanently do leave in January, I think it would be prudent to keep James Wilson, as much as that may stifle his progression short term. I think it'd be doing the right thing for the club in that spell, and I would sign somebody else alongside that.
Okay. The last one
Or play Craig
is
Halkett as a striker. I don't know.
as
There's
Craig
always
Levine
that.
is
Yep.
appointed as co-manager of Hearts with Derek McInnes, and Kevin McInnes persuaded to return from retirement wherever he is now in either Germany or Canada. The final player, and I feel like being on the end of a phone call from Bart Simpson, and I'm Mo in his tavern, and the phone rings. It's from Finlay Galloway, and this player exists. And can you imagine the Scottish media if they got crazy when a former ESPN colleague of mine, Lutz Pfannenstiel, who had had many Bundesliga games, is appointed sporting director of Aberdeen recently, who's been dead, who's also, he wasn't a penguin botherer, but he did things with penguins. And he was also released from prison for doing something he never did in the first place. They had a
Hope that's
ball
not
with
linked in with
that.
the Penguin bother.
No, it's got nothing to do with that. But the message I got, there is a striker because his name is Jez Hornkamp.
Oh,
It's true. He does exist. He
Uh,
does exist. He plays for Heracles in the Eredivisie. He was linked with Nottingham Forest a few weeks ago. Sorry, a few years ago. I doubt we'll see him at Hearts, but imagine if we did. He's not someone like IP Squint or someone like that Bart phones up Mo and does all that.
Amanda
Jez
hug and kiss.
Hornkamp just deserves a message. I doubt we'll be seeing him at Tynecastle, but that one is just for you, Finlay Galloway. Thank you for your mention. Right, this is. We were just motoring along nicely, and then we hit a bump in the road. We did tangents, and it was like the good old days or the bad old days. Let's end with Scott McIntosh's team to face Killy on Wednesday night. I'm more intrigued by your formation and then your lineup. What you got?
I'm. I feel like I don't want to get stuck into the formation chat. I just want to. I just
Well,
want
give
to.
me the players, and then we'll pick a formation based on who you're
I know.
picking.
I'd like to see Borshevink get a chance at right back. It's a game where we should have the majority of the game. It's a game where he shouldn't be overly worrying about his defensive duties,
If
but
you
can
can't trust him
support
in this,
the
Scott,
player in
when
front of
can you?
him. Exactly. I would like to see him in there. I'd like to see McAtee getting a chance at centre mid. I'd quite like Kurjota to get a chance at right mid, or even Kizaridis at right wing and put Spittle in at left wing as long as you've got Milne providing that overlapping option at left back. I think you could do that as well. So, look, there's a few things I'd like to see. I'd just like to see a couple of positive changes for Saturday. I'm positive we can get a really good win at this. Kilmarnock have been really struggling. I think anyone who's followed Scottish football over the last 3 or 4 years closely enough know just how sort of hot and cold Stuart Kettlewell's teams can go through. Motherwell would the same. Motherwell would go through these spells of looking like world beaters for maybe 5 or 6 weeks, and then they'd lose the next six, and it looks as if he's that sort of patchy or spotty form. It's similar to Lee Johnson had that sort of tag, didn't he, when he was at sort of Sunderland and Hibs and that. And I think they're struggling just now. They got a decent point at home against Dundee United on Saturday. Wasn't a particularly great match though, and I feel there's more than enough there for us to get that momentum back and not just get a win, but get a decent comprehensive win, which gives us that boost going into a big title match against Celtic on Sunday. So I'm going to say 4-0 Hearts.
Goal scorer?
I think Braga will get back in the goals.
Okay. I don't think Braga's in the team because here's the team that I'm going to select.
Possible.
It's a 4-4-2. Every single player is playing in their preferred position. Swallow in goal, Borchgrevink at right back, Halkett alongside either Finlay or McCart, depending on if Finlay's 100%, and Harry Milne at left back. Kiriota, if he's available, at right midfield, McEntee and Devlin in the middle, Kizaridis on the left, Kabori and Shankland. 4-4-2 for me. Lawrence Shankland will score. Hearts will win by 2-0, and Claudio Braga will come on, stung by the fact he doesn't start, will produce a fantastic performance, and then there's a headache for Derek McInnes as to whether or not he starts with Claudio Braga against Celtic at the weekend. That's what's going to happen. So you may as well just give us the 3 points now because we're looking into our crystal ball. We're seeing the bigger picture. And if it's not Shankland that scores, I think it will be Jiz Hornkamp. Really? I mean, come on. That'll do us. We'll be back with a shorter episode on Thursday. Scott has agreed to return. Maybe even Laurie as well. We haven't even spoken about that with him. We'll do a post Kilmarnock roundup on Thursday, and we will look ahead to Celtic this weekend on Sunday. But before all that, it's Kilmarnock on Wednesday. And if Hearts get back to winning ways and get all 3 points, then all is right again. And if not, then Scott on Thursday might have something to say about Brexit Dell. Bye for now.